All right, welcome to episode number 17 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, recorded on March 21st, 2019. My name's Eric, I'm the host of the show. I'm based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, VE3 EPN, and a computer geek. I got into preparedness when I was working frontline emergency services and witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events such as ice storms, power outages, etc. I started a small preparedness company to help people get prepared and to be able to look after themselves for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
Well, greetings to the Doomstead. My name is Ian, and I live on a small hobby farm. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, sport shooter, reloader, and my farm's designated handyman. My professional background has taught me to adapt to unexpected situations and also reinforces my belief that learning never ends.
I'm Alan. My friends and family call me a safety nerd. My background as a first responder has helped me develop my mind for safety. I teach first aid, coach my family and friends to be better prepared. I'm a locksmith by trade and have worked in the physical security industry for more than 20 years now.
Hi, my name's Taha and I'm a professional accountant based in Toronto. After having worked in various accounting positions in the industry for about 10 years, I started Countex CPA, which is a virtual accounting firm that utilizes cloud-based technologies to automate manual accounting, bookkeeping, and payroll processes. What we do is basically by customizing a tech stack for our clients, we increase efficiency, which allows our clients to spend more time on business growth and be better prepared for CRA audits, which no one likes.
Well, it sounds basically just by that introduction alone that tells me you're smarter than the rest of us put together, I think. So,
Absolutely.
I'll take that as a compliment, but I think I'm not smarter than any one of you here.
So we've got some sensible or I don't know, maybe some financially savvy content for you in this episode. Already off to a good start with the jokes. We're going to start off with some news articles relating to preparedness in the outdoors. We'll be letting you know how we've improved our preparedness since our last episode. Then we're going to get into the main topic of the episode, money's role in preparedness. So let's move into some news articles.
I found a couple of articles for this week. One from the Financial Post predicting a recession. Of course, that's not really news. Stats say that we go through one about every 8 years or so, and we're overdue for that one. So thought that was kind of topical. And then I found another video. This particular one was from CNN. Shows two girls. They were sisters, 5 and 8 years old, who spent the weekend lost in the woods. Mom and dad had done some survival training with them, and the local 4-H club had done some training with them. So it was a video that was taken, of course, after the fact, and they discussed kind of some of the things that they did to keep themselves safe. And they came out without being any worse for wear, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's very interesting. The fact that actually both my girls are at a 4-H camp right now called Surviving the Challenge. So it's I guess it comes in handy.
Oh, look at
There
that.
you go.
All right, so I found a news article here from the Financial Post, and it's just in regards to Canada's security watchdogs, talking about the framework to address risks posed by websites and companies that have popped up to allow investors to buy and sell Bitcoin and other digital currencies. So interesting topic, especially since we're on the financial thing this episode. They're looking at maybe regulating those securities, because right now it's kind of the Wild West as far as regulation and how things work with the cryptocurrency, and just figured I'd throw that article in for us.
I had one as well, but it was basically I've been getting grief from private messages from some of the listeners about how we don't have enough Canadian news, and I tried my best to find something preparedness related, and the best I could come up with still something in the States. And so Nebraska flooding. So yeah, nothing unusual there. Nebraska gets floods every spring, kind of like Manitoba does. But this one was interesting. The fact that it was 7 feet over the highest level they've ever recorded. So it was definitely a record-breaking flood for sure. So you never know. Just when you think you're prepared for the worst, I guess it comes along even more so worse.
First time on the podcast, I thought I would contribute to the newsroom here. What I found was something about tax prep software, and also since it's the tax season, a lot of people try and find ways to do the taxes themselves. Some people get help of a professional accountant. Some people try and find a free software just to save some money. The article talks about where your data is going. You got to be careful about just signing up for a free software. You should be concerned about who's the end user of your data, because when you share financial information with someone, you basically share everything with them. So got to be careful about what's out there, what's free. There are no free lunches in the world. So this is a prime example for that.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, you look at Facebook. I mean, when something like Facebook or this tax software is free, you're not the customer, you're the product. So, I mean, I think definitely they have to make some money somehow. And so that's just like Facebook or anything else. They sell your information for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. The computer geek in me pops up when I hear this one. Because absolutely, you're if you're not paying for it, you're paying for it somehow. It might not be financially, but they're getting something out of you.
Even if people decide to do their personal taxes themselves, just to make sure that they're more educated about their personal finances, or maybe they just have an interest in doing it themselves, you can pick something from Costco. I think you get 10 returns for $29.99. You can't get any better than that, and good use of your Costco membership as well.
Oh yeah, and then hopefully they're not stealing your data as well, right?
Well, I hope so. Yeah. Yep. No comments there, but yeah. I hope it does.
Fair enough. We can hope anyways, right? So maybe we'll move into what we've done lately for our preps. So for myself, the last week, I've been working on a new skill. I've been picking Alan's brain a little bit here. I've been working on lock picking.
Picking. Yeah.
So I've successfully gained access to my master lock that I use for my trailer. So I was quite actually surprised how easy it was once I got the hang of picking a few basic locks to actually gain access to that one. Needless to say, it's not locking my trailer anymore.
Kind of kills the confidence level in all these locks you spend money on, right?
Yeah, considering I'm just learning, and I opened it up within about 2 or 3 minutes, and it was actually locking my boat. No, not anymore.
Actually, a question for Alan. Do they actually have I heard they have lock picking, or I can't remember what they actually call them, but lock picking tournaments and stuff like that? Is that
yes? Lock sport is what it's called. There are many organizations around that do that, where it's hobbyists that get together and pick locks, and there are all kinds of competitions out there, including different types of manipulation, and drawing a blank on the impressioning is the technique that's used to actually make a working key with a file and some specific skills. I actually watched a guy make a key for a standard Schlage A series lock, which is just a fairly basic two key and knob cylinder. He actually made a working key from a blank with a file and a pair of vice grips in about 47 seconds, which is a little bit less time than it takes me to find the screwdriver in the back of my car. So I was, it's quite impressive. Some of the guys that do that, and that's their main focus outside of their day job, if they have one. There are guys out there that locks better than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm nowhere near as good as they are.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to learn.
Huh. Well,
it's it definitely puts into context what we rely on for security.
Well, as for myself, I guess I've been busy again, cleaning up some more underbrush on the farm. Basically, fire season's coming up, so we were cleaning all the stuff that fell down during the big stores over the winter. So other than that, I stocked up on some animal feed. Made another reloading brass deal with Bogey actually a couple weeks ago, but I forgot to mention that earlier. Let's see here. I did some controlled burn work before the burn ban kicks in. Like I said, April 1st. Took a chainsaw with my daughter. Actually, we hiked up the trails behind the house, and we had to work on maintenance work since the winter storms had knocked down a bunch of trees behind us. We actually decided to clean that up. So the trails that we use back there are everything for my daily hike that we were talking about before with the fitness and prepping. We use it for hunting, and of course it provides a nice little bug out trail system through our little rainy jungle to make North Vietnam blush. And then we took down the spare tire of my truck, rust scraped and painted the rim, and checked the pressure and run that back up there, and then did a general inspection of the underside of the bug out vehicle.
For me, it's been a week of heavy training, lots of knot tying practice. I've been doing learning some rescue knots, and trying to get those so that I can do them one-handed behind my back and blindfolded while being kicked in the head. And it's been a good time. Can't tie knots, tie lots. That's rule number 2.
Interesting. After hearing all of that, looks like I haven't done anything throughout the week.
Yeah, but it's tax season. You get a buy on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, this month's a write-off for you no matter what.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe we'll move into the main topic of the show, being financial preparedness. So why do we worry about financial preps?
Well, number 1, it acts as layoff insurance.
Yeah, I would say there's also a medical disability insurance aspect. Basically, in case you have suddenly stopped having the ability to work, certainly if it's not covered by your company, that's something to keep in mind. So I guess it certainly adds to peace of mind.
And maybe a little bit of savings to buy some gear at Rapid Survival. Oh, yes.
Yeah, sure.
Three bad jokes.
Yes.
Should add some background music for that as well.
Yeah. Of course, it's a security that can get traded for items in the event of a financial collapse or other type of emergency situation. Assuming society still places value on currency versus something else. First, you want to make sure you've got some small bills. Chances are people won't be making change. But if your home's destroyed in a natural disaster or other type of event, it's not covered by insurance, you still need to pay the bank, right? So something else you want to keep in mind, and that's why we kind of start with preparedness for your financial preps.
Yeah, I wanted to add a note in there as well. Like over here, we have an extra fee for earthquake insurance. But the problem is, if I think the earthquake was big enough to wipe out a bunch of houses, businesses being businesses, you know darn well they'd probably try and declare bankruptcy long before they try to pay out thousands of claims, right?
True.
I mean, I think even in 9/11, a bunch of the insurance companies went to bankrupt rather than paying out all the claims they had. So they just said, well, let's close the doors. So, and it's a massive premium out here too. Actually, it's about double the cost for house insurance if you want earthquake insurance.
Wow.
Just to add something to that, although you might be thinking that you got some sort of insurance that covers you, not sure how many people actually read through the fine print and realize what is actually covered and what isn't covered.
Good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of people just sign up for the insurance, think they're covered for absolutely everything, and meanwhile that fine print comes out and bites you when you're coming to cash in.
It's only when you have to use it is when you realize a lot of the stuff wasn't covered. You're not supposed to have X many gold bars in your house at that moment.
Good point. Yeah.
I'd be digging through the rubble for the slag, though, for sure, just to make sure I can find it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll move into some questions here for the expert on the show, and start out with the nice, easy one for you. What's the most common financial mistake you see people make?
So the most common one when I talk to my clients, friends and family, acquaintances, people strike up a conversation when they know that I'm an accountant, is they do not save enough of their paycheck, or in the prime years, or in the years that they're making the most money, is when they don't save up enough. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people doing. It's not like they're not making good money. They're making very good money. As a combined family income, you're bringing in tons of cash. However, you're spending it the same way, and you don't save enough for your retirements or for years where the income is not sufficient to cover your expenses.
Right. So what percentage would you suggest people be putting aside?
It really depends on a person to person. I would say the goal should be, and this might be a little high for a lot of people, but the goal should be to set aside at least 20 to 25% of every paycheck that you make, just as a retirement saving, you could say, or to purchase something that would appreciate in the future.
Well, for those of us that dislike banks, I'm not saying I'm one of them, just say it. Possibly some of our listeners, though, do you have any advice on how to store and save money, maybe as an alternative means besides like stuffing it under a mattress?
Stuffing it under the mattress definitely will not work. Now, in any first world country, the banks are the central. The entire economy is centered around the banks and insurance companies. Unfortunately, those are two areas that you cannot avoid. Imagine driving on the road and you get pulled over and you don't have car insurance. What are you going to tell the cops? I don't like insurance companies. Well, that's not going to work.
Good point. Yeah.
Similarly, you dislike banks. However, if you do decide to buy some property of your own, purchase something, sell something, you might have to go through a bank. You won't be able to get a mortgage without visiting a bank. You might not be able to pay your utility bill if you decide not to visit the bank. So there's some people out there who do not like banks, but that's something that you just have to keep it in your heart and just do the transactions with them.
It's a necessary evil, right? So you got to do it.
Hold your nose, get it done. I mean, who doesn't deposit their paycheck directly to a bank account nowadays, right?
Correct.
Exactly.
I was actually a big thing with a with Starbucks, I remember hearing that in Canada it wasn't such a big deal because people would, everybody gets their paycheck direct deposited, but in the U.S. there's a significant volume of their employees that don't have bank accounts, and so there was a postal disruption, and all of a sudden tens of thousands of Starbucks employees weren't getting paid because the checks weren't being delivered on time, which was just I don't understand. I can't understand how it happens, but it's a big thing in the U.S. where people don't have bank accounts.
That's a little surprising. Wouldn't you just pick it up from your employer instead of putting it?
Well, yeah, but if the check has to be mailed from the corporate headquarters to the stores, and then they get picked up.
Oh wow!
So it wasn't getting out to the stores. Yeah.
Interesting.
Sounds like some people. It sounds like there's some people down there Tarzaning from paycheck to paycheck. Just kind of like just making it from one to the other, and just get their money just in time, right?
Nope.
So are there common myths about finances that we should know about? I remember hearing, I think it was my grandpa told me a story during wartime when people would try and buy things above and beyond the rational allotments, and the currency they had, the cash they had on hand, wasn't useful. It wasn't worth anything. Is that a thing? Are there any other myths out there we should know about?
That is a reality. However, in where we are in North America, it's the chances of that happening is very slim. However, there are certain parts of the world where, due to political instability, the entire regime collapses, or you have a political shutdown, and currency is no longer it's worth nothing. When they had the war in Iraq, they were selling the local currency at the paper shops because it was worth nothing anymore, and the US dollar became the major currency. So in extreme situations like that, yes, that is correct. And what comes in handy during that time, like it or not, is precious metals.
Actually, interestingly, I mean, we've had a couple of recent ones too. We've had Venezuela, where they got the hyperinflation happening, and my grandma actually went through the Weimar Republic in Germany. So same thing. I mean, it's a point where you get the wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread, or after a while, it's just like, you know what? I'll just trade you some eggs for bread. That probably just work better. Yeah. And it just depends on the economic background of the country.
Yeah. And depending upon where you are, maybe just a tank full of gas could be worth $1 million at that point.
Yeah, sure. Literally.
Yeah.
I think I left a link on one of the previous episodes about that documentary down in Venezuela, and the guy at the gas station wasn't accepting currency anymore because it wasn't worth carrying around. So he just started collecting like eggs, pocket knives, whatever have you, like just anything that was worth money that was a tangible asset, or just because it's not worth keeping.
Oh, interesting.
Just to add something to that. Few years back, when the Canadian dollar was actually higher than the US dollar, you would get a lot of visitors from the US trying to fill up, especially in Southern Ontario and the bordering states. They would try cashing in their US dollars at gas stations, and gas stations actually stopped accepting them. So you would walk in with your US dollars thinking you can probably get some gas, and the person will be like, nope, only Canadian dollars or card or debit card.
That still happens now going the other way. I drove through the U.S. a couple of years ago, forgot to change my money before I crossed the border, and standing at the truck stop in Detroit, trying to beg truckers to change my cash for me. But it's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would some warning signs be that people should watch out for that could possibly suggest that maybe a financial collapse or a recession or something is on the horizon?
So every now and then, and Alan mentioned this at the beginning of the show, that a financial recession or an adjustment is what they call it. It's almost always due every 8 to 10 years, and no one can actually predict it. The person who predicts it becomes a winner for that particular phase. But if everyone were to figure out when a recession is going to hit, everyone's going to go in and start shorting stocks and make some money off of it. Now, what are the possible signs? If someone follows the stock market closely or keeps an eye on world events, that's usually a good indicator. Oil price is a good indicator. Gold, the billion, that's a good indicator of the financial stability or instability. For the past few years, the U.S. market has been doing very well. The U.S. dollar is very strong, but then again, there needs to be a correction, and we're approaching the 10-year mark. We haven't seen one So again, hopefully soon, you will see a recession. Just a joke around it. It's not a recession until you lose your own job. It's when you're so it's for a lot of people who actually went through the Great Recession 10 years ago. It wasn't a big concern for them because they were not affected at all. The entire community or the entire neighborhood was. It just didn't affect them at all.
Well, it's true. We definitely need to look at things from our own perspective more than anything else, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Keep up those lock picking skills, Eric. Locksmithing is a recession proof trade. As people lose their jobs, the need for security rises.
All right, I'm going to keep up the skills then. Master locks today, and it'll be something bigger and better by the next episode.
So, Taha, I got a bit of a long-winded question for you here, but bear with me. So, let's assume the banks aren't accessible for whatever reason. I'm thinking like a Cyprus type event there. Or I'm just kind of curious what kind of safeguards or protections are in place for those who have their savings in an account, and how can people prepare for this possibility? And I'm thinking like from a CDIC perspective or bail-in legislation or anything you want to talk about like that.
So the CDIC does protect your deposits up to $100,000 for every account that you hold under every individual's name. However, if you are fortunate to have more than $100,000 in your bank account, the only balance that is protected is the first $100,000. So if you do have $1 million sitting in your bank account, which trust me, a lot of people do, and they don't know what to do with it, what you can stake claim to is just $100,000. Now, what safeguards do you have in place? Diversification is always a good option. You could have your money invested instead of having all of it sitting in a bank. You could have it invested in property. You could have precious metals. You'll keep hearing that a lot. Gold, silver, diamonds. Art is another form of assets that people try and build up, especially the ultra rich. That's what they like to buy. They like to buy art and keep it stored away. Again, there are risks associated with it. The other thing that people do in order to protect their wealth is, again, it's keeping in mind that banks might collapse or anything, is purchase properties in countries other than their home country.
That's actually some really good points. So I think we'll have to come back to gold for sure. Maybe talk about precious metals a little further on down the podcast here. I think Alan's got another question though, for sure.
So, should our financial system collapse? And I mean, we know there are lots of safeguards against that, but say the worst happens, because that's what we plan for. That's what we prepare for. What should we do? What advice would you have for the people out there?
In terms of financial collapse, it's never usually the outside economy that hurts people that much. The economy could be booming if for some reason you lose your job and you cannot find one, and it takes you 12 months to do that. You could be going through a personal recession where everyone around you could be enjoying the economic boom. So my advice to people always is to have some sort of safety cash put away, an amount that they can access in terms of a situation where they lose income, or maybe the cost of living goes up, for example. A lot of people, unfortunately, in Canada live paycheck to paycheck. It's the Tarzan theory, right? That is a very unfortunate situation, and it's not just people who are making less money. It's not just that. You might be thinking that sometimes it's people who are working minimum wage that are living paycheck to paycheck. That's not the case. Sometimes it's people who are earning six figures and they're living paycheck to paycheck. So again, it's how do you prepare yourself is to set aside funds or a safety cash or some sort of safety pool that you can tap into if a financial need arises.
Is there a certain amount that you would suggest people set aside?
It's 6 months to 12 months of your fixed monthly expenses. So that's your mortgage, either your mortgage or rent, car payments, insurance, activities for your family, eating out, just your regular expenditure. If someone has a good grasp of that, 6 to 12 months would be a very good estimate of what would be sufficient for them to find alternative ways of making money.
Awesome. So another question here. What are your thoughts on cryptocurrency? I know a lot of people that I talk to in the preparedness world are starting to kind of look at that as an option. Some are running to the hills and don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but more and more are kind of looking at it. you think it's a good idea or a bad idea to include this in your financial plan?
This is just my personal opinion. I would say stay away from cryptocurrencies. It's just a personal opinion again. The sole reason is because it's not regulated, and again, you don't know who has your information. The value of it as well. The Bitcoin went from a couple thousand to double digits, 10,000 plus, or I think it even surpassed 15,000 at one point, and then it came crashing down. There's definitely someone who makes money off of it. It's like the stock market. The big players end up making the money. It's the commoners who end up losing the money. I have a similar opinion on cryptocurrency, and again, it's something that I have looked into personally. And since it's not regulated, I recommend my clients to stay away from it.
That's solid advice.
Well, I mean, if regular fiat currency is still just based on the belief it's worth something, I mean, cryptocurrency is just one level higher than that. The fact that it's basically just like the new hip and cool thing to do. But yeah, there's absolutely nothing. There's no value behind it or no tangible asset behind it other than faith, right?
No, correct. And I can't recall the exact article, but there was something about a person having X number of Bitcoins and woke up next morning, logged into the account, and saw something missing. And who do you go report to at that point? You can't call the cops and be like, I lost 10 Bitcoins. They'll be like, oh, that's not regulated. Sorry, I can't help you there.
Exactly. There was that one exchange recently too, where the owner of the exchange passed away. He had all the passwords and such to gain access to everything, and all the money's locked away, and nobody can get into it now. So that again is no regulation, right? There's no backups. There's no second person in command at that one, and everything's locked away, and everybody's money is encrypted and no longer accessible. So that's scary to say the least.
Correct.
Actually, just out of curiosity, stay away from that. So, actually, I'm just going to skip over a couple of points on the show notes there, guys. But just on a quick question on carrying debt there. So, a lot of people seem to carry credit card balances. I firmly don't believe in doing that, and but a lot of people do. Any, I guess, considerations with percentages, line of credits versus credit card debt, maybe consolidating, anything you want to throw out there?
So credit cards, and just before I touch upon that question, when I was in university, I was taking a fourth year level course, and the course was titled Personal Finance. The sole purpose that I took it is because I wanted an A grade just to boost up my average for the semester. However, I walked into that class, and this is a fourth year university level class, and we're talking about mortgages, how to get a mortgage, what would be an interest rate, like what is an APR, and how should you buy a car, and what are the things that you need to avoid. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, isn't this common sense? Why are we teaching this at a university level course? You'd be surprised. There were close to 300 people in that class. A lot of people had no clue what was going on. So these are some of the basics of life that need to be taught. And I'm of the opinion that this is something that should be taught in high school, as early as in grade 9 or grade 10, instead of learning calculus and algebra and all of these different complicated things that you probably wouldn't even use in your life ever. People should be taught personal finance, but I guess it doesn't really work to the benefit of the credit card companies and the banks, because that's when they come in and actually make money. So going back to your question about credit cards versus line of credits, credit cards usually have the most highest interest rate. Sometimes you're paying up to 19.99%. I believe, I might be wrong. The legal interest rate in Canada is about 35%, is up to what you can charge as an interest rate, and that's allowed. Some people who have really bad credit, you've seen the signs on the lawn that says good credit, bad credit, get a car, walk away right now with a brand new car or something. That's when you're paying double-digit interest amounts, and that is ridiculous. When I see clients doing that, or people come up to me, usually when in your situation like that, you don't need an accountant, you need a debt consolidation professional. It's unfortunate some people, due to personal circumstances or for short-term needs, do end up borrowing from credit cards, and it spirals out of hand. You can always try and avoid credit card debt. There are alternative ways of financing short-term needs. The first thing that I would say is reach out to friends and family. If you're good with your money, you're just dealing with a short-term cash situation, see if you can secure some interest-free loans from within the family that you can pay back within a reasonable time frame. If not, line of credits are the next alternatives. Interest rates on line of credits are typically prime plus 3 to 5%. Credit cards are the worst. That's when, and unfortunately, that's the stuff that people tap into when there's a short-term need. Because when you have a credit card, you get the statement at the end of the month. Until then, it's swipe, 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 and those $20 bills and $10 bills and a lunch here or lunch there, the coffee at Tim Hortons, the coffee for a friend at Tim Hortons, all adds up to a couple $1,000, and then you realize, oh, I don't have the money to pay for this, and that's when it starts piling up.
I'm actually kind of blown away in the fact that like not like people carrying balances and credit cards and stuff like that. It's just like like why don't they back in high school, like you mentioned, teach people how to fill out a tax return even, let alone basic finances or anything else. And instead they're worried about random other classes that really won't help you in the long term. But that's a basic life skill for sure.
Now this might surprise you. They don't even teach you how to file a tax return when you go get your CPA designation.
That's okay, really. I'm kind of blown away by that.
I'm 100% blown away by that.
Yeah, they teach you all of the tax laws and everything, but they don't show you how to actually file a return. The first time when you actually walk into an accounting practice and everyone's going through the initial grind of being an accounting assistant or an accounting clerk or a tax preparer, the first time when you file a tax return, you're blown away by the automation and the amount of information that you were not supposed to know. Like, why did I study the Tax Act for no reason? All I had to do was a couple of clicks and this tax return's done. So
wow.
It's, yeah, I'm surprised you guys are blown away, but that's the truth. The accountants know that.
It's like the Wizard of Oz, just pay no attention behind the curtain there, right?
Yep.
So I guess just a quick question. We were talking about Tarzan theory before there for sure, but I would just a couple basic levels of financial preps that people might want to talk about here. We could most people can't treat their finances like the government does, so you can't be spending more than you make, or else you're in financial insolvency like the government. Financial solvency, if you're at that level, you're just covering your debt, living expenses, equal to your income, which means you're Tarzaning from paycheck to paycheck and just kind of making ends meet. I think at this podcast level, we're just trying to make that financial stability mark, which is debt plus living expenses, and then having an emergency fund to cover that at the very least, and then moving up from there, right? So as far as spending within your means, you mentioned 25%. Anything else as far as tips and tricks on that, like just how to reduce any sort of basic costs, or is there any accounting tricks you might want to talk about that people don't know about?
There's a fine line between being frugal in your spending and being a miser. So I don't suggest people to be a miser, but you can go out for a fancy dinner every now and then, but just don't do it every day. Just try and the biggest killer is when I look at people at work who buy lunch every day. It's like, you could have just prepared this at home, and what you spend in the first week, you could have had lunches. You could have had a prepared lunch for an entire month in that same cost. Like when you go down to Tim Hortons and spend $8 on lunch, you're doing it. Your spouse is probably doing the same, right? And collectively as a family, you spend $16 on lunch, where for $16 you could have probably had a full meal for 2 days, home prepped. So that's some of the stuff that I come across, and it's more of a convenience for people to just have the ability to just go outside and purchase that meal. However, the costs do add up, and the only reason why I'm talking about this in much detail is because we've had multiple conversations with friends and family about this. On average, a person spends about $300 to $400 a month just on lunches that they purchase at work.
Oh, I've had similar conversations with coworkers right now living on the West Coast about having a house that's within your means as well. Like spending within your means is one thing, but like having a house that suits your income, meaning like in case the interest rates that were currently low, jump up 5, 6, 7%, all of a sudden that house is without, outside of your means, then what?
Correct.
Yeah.
Same goes for cars. I've seen a lot of people, although I used to envy them, not anymore. When they got their first job, they went ahead and purchased that Mustang or that nice convertible, and half of their paycheck was going towards car payments, and that's a killer. And that's the time when you really need to save up and have enough money to purchase some property, because That's always beneficial because paying rent does not make sense in the long run. For some places, it does work out that way, but when you see people spending the way that they're spending on clothing, it could be, was it really necessary for you to go buy that $1,200 winter coat, where you could have survived with a nice one from whatever store you like for $100 or $150?
Quick question for you. There's a bit of I'm going to call it a fad running around the internet right now, and I don't really know much about it, but it kind of piques my interest. These people talk about being your own banker, and basically what it boils down to is some sort of weird convoluted scheme where you take out a life insurance policy and borrow against it and then pay back the life insurance versus a mortgage. Have you heard much about that?
I haven't heard much about that. I would be interested in to learn more about it. I know there's some sort of there are a group of people, like-minded people who have decided to live life debt-free, and they on CNN typically they come up with these stories where a person is retired and he's only 35, and you read up on how they got to that point. Everyone has a different way of getting to that phase in life. However, the life insurance, borrowing from it, I haven't heard much about that.
Yeah, there's a couple of books out there. One's a Canadian guy named John Snyson out of Winnipeg, and he had this Be Your Own Banker book, and I think my wife's reading it right now. I'm going to try it next, but I was just wondering if you had heard some pitfalls or anything about that, but that's interesting. Tangible assets. Anything you'd recommend, like rental houses, farmland? Definitely not cars.
Cars. Well, cars are not a complete write-off. Some cars do appreciate in value. If you look at some of the Shelbys from the 1960s and 70s, so some of those cars go for sale for $55,000 or sometimes even more. So it depends. Again, if you plan on purchasing a F-150 and hope that the value of that car is going to appreciate, you're making a wrong bet over there. Again, it really depends what you're into. Sometimes people are into a friend of mine. He's into watches. And the stuff that he purchases is very expensive. And surprisingly, first I thought it was a very stupid idea of his to do this, but surprisingly, those things go up in value because he's picking out the right stuff. So you need to be a connoisseur of watches to use it, for lack of a better term, to figure out which thing would appreciate in value. Definitely, if you have excess funds available, a rental property could be a good investment. Again, it depends again on in the areas that you're living in. If you're living in a remote area, maybe a rental property would not make that much sense. But if you're living in an urban city, someplace like Vancouver or Toronto, it would make sense to get a rental property because the current rents are ridiculously high.
You don't have to tell me that for sure. We have a second place in Vancouver, and it's a little bit ridiculous. Precious metals. Do you want to come back and touch on that again, like just as a means to preserve wealth, or like maybe recommend against or for speculation with it, or whatever have you?
It's always, again, it really depends on every person's financial situation, how much excess cash do they have available to set aside. Some people do RRSPs and have that invested in mutual funds and things like that. Precious metals, again, it's from a financial preparedness perspective, if you're not sure about the political stability of a country or anything like that, gold is gold, right? So gold always is a good alternative to money. But again, once you purchase the gold, the question is, where do you store it?
Well, I guess, and how easy it is to cash out too on a regular basis. Like, yeah, I don't think you want to be, buying and cashing out too often because you're probably going to lose on the exchange, I'm thinking.
You will lose out on the exchange again in an emergency situation. You got to pay someone $100 equivalent. What are you going to do? Scrape off something off your gold bar and give shavings off to someone? It really comes down to the usability and how the logistics would work out. Like, would you trade a gold bar for a bag of, I don't know, corn chips or something? I don't know. It really comes out to how usable is your precious metal at that point.
I think they make commercials about that. What would you do for a Kit Kat bar or something like that?
Yeah.
It was a Klondike bar.
A Klondike bar.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe that's where silver comes in too, right? It's worth less money. It's a little more, I guess, dividable or whatever have you.
Yep.
It's very interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, precious metals is certainly something that the preparedness community talks a lot about for sure.
Well, absolutely they do.
But like you said, like I said, it comes down to the usability. If somebody offered me a gold bar for something that was in my house and there was no place for me to exchange that bar for other commodities, then it really has no value. So I think one of the big things that we forget is that currency is just a standardized bartering system, right? So if you've got something else that somebody would rather have, then an item to barter with, whether it's gold, silver, lead, or food, an item to barter with is an item to barter with, right? It's only as valuable as the person who wants it.
Well, my concern is how does the average person discover if it's actual gold or not just painted lead?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, other than the obvious scrape test, but I'm just saying, like, if somebody comes up with me with a troy ounce of gold, it's like, I don't know if this is real or not, or like how am I supposed to know a scale or whatever have you. It's that's just not a very easy barter item for sure.
You're saying some people aren't honest?
I'm just saying it could happen.
I'm saying when things get really bad, nobody's honest.
Fair enough. Yep.
We're all out for number one at the end of the day.
I have a bigger concern in an emergency situation. Who has the sane mind to actually stand there and think about how much this gold bar is worth, and is this real or is this fake? In my mind, I would just be like, run to save my life, right?
Exactly. I'll
Exactly.
give you 13 chickens for that. No, never mind that floodwater coming in. Yeah, no, that's tough for sure. It's I guess that's where a lot of the theoretical versus the practical comes into play, right?
Yeah, and at that point, we talk about tangible assets, we talk about precious metals, we talk about currencies and everything. But in an emergency situation, the first thing that you like to protect is your own life and the life of the people around you. And you guys know this better than I do. You guys have been first responders and everything. At that point, no one really cares about what they're saving in terms of their assets. You don't even care for your documents. You just care about saving your life and making sure that you and your family are safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, priority number one is life, right? And
correct. Everything else can be earned back or figured out. You can go back to the bank and maybe they'll have a picture of you lying somewhere and they'll give you back your assets, and your numbers in your online bank account will come back up.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, as far as cash on a person and in a vehicle, one thing I've noticed a lot of times is as an everyday preparedness item is that a lot of times the Interact system's down or the Visa system's down. And it's amazing how many people don't even have the small amount of cash to cover stuff like that. I was going to recommend people just to at least carry something enough to cover like a tank of gas or a hotel stay or whatever have you, just as a basic thing. Do you carry or do you recommend people carrying like a small amount of cash on them at all, or like?
Not on a day-to-day basis, but if you are planning on taking a road trip, yes, definitely you should. You never know the type of situation that you end up in, especially if it's not summertime and the weather is not that great. Well, even if it is nice weather, you never know the type of situation that you end up in. It's always better to don't carry too much cash, then that becomes a security. You stop at an unknown place and you don't know if you should get out of the car, especially if you drive a fancy car.
Yeah, flash it all.
Yeah. You shouldn't be getting off the car to fill up gas, and a couple bills just fall off your pocket. That just gives the wrong signal.
Absolutely. Or the right one if you're the person looking for the person with the wads of cash.
That's right. So just agree, just a small amount to cover, especially if you're going on a road trip. A couple $100, different currencies, maybe US and Canadian. That would be nice.
Just kind of to touch on your like a hotel stay. If you plan to stay in a hotel and you don't have a credit card, be prepared to have $1,000 in cash that they're going to hold on to until you check out.
Yeah,
that's right.
Point.
And of course, you're not allowed to steal the soap or the shampoo right?
No.
Well, you can take the shampoo, just not the towels.
Okay, there you go.
What about the bathrobe?
they're usually $45 according to the card in the hotel I was in on the weekend.
All right, well, maybe I'll
just be prepared for that. If you don't have a credit card, then be prepared to literally leave $1,000 at the counter that they'll hang on to until they inspect your room when you check out, and you have to actually check out.
And make sure the person behind the counter actually works at the hotel.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. What money? What are you talking
What are you
about?
talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Get a receipt for everything.
Yep.
Right, so maybe I'll go over a few things that I think maybe you should have on hand, just even on a daily basis. And of course, guys, feel free to chime in as I list a few things off here. And for sure, I would say copies of your financial documents. Just something you might want to have at home. You know, your bank statements, credit card statements, some mortgage statements, something that proves that you actually have those accounts, that you actually hold that mortgage. You know, if your computer or something goes down or power outage or something like that happens and you have no other way to look those up, how do you actually prove that you ever had those accounts, right? Maybe everything will come back up and everything will be fine. Maybe it won't, and now you don't have any kind of proof that you even ever had those accounts. So
add all your insurance documents into that as well, all your insurance policy numbers.
And read the fine print. We learned that at the beginning of the show.
Definitely read the fine print.
Yep, absolutely. It's like I touched on there, a list of all your, even just your account numbers. Make sure it's in a handy, like a handy spot, maybe a phone app, you know, in a fire safety box somewhere in your house. You know, it's handy right now when you can fire up your iPhone or your Android or something, and it automatically knows your account numbers. It knows all the ways to access your bank accounts, your credit card statements, and all that. But what if it doesn't work? Just have all that stuff written down somewhere safe, somewhere you can keep it.
Almost like putting it on an inch drive or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. For the bug out bag. Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah.
I'd like to add something in here.
Sure.
You can, for this particular reason, for storing up documents and everything. And again, Eric's the computer geek here. He probably knows what happens behind data centers and everything. Again, utilize technology. Try to put it up on. Try to have your electronics. Try to have your documents electronically at PDF or something. Take pictures of it. Keep it on your cell phone or put it on a hard drive. Even the USBs and the hard drives can go out, but cloud-based technologies are amazing these days. You can utilize them. Keep a copy of your passport, any important documents, your driver's license, your bank statements, your credit card statements, your picture, even pictures of your credit cards. This one time, just a personal experience. I was driving somewhere, and after having driven for about an hour and a half, I realized I don't have my wallet on me. And then I had to get gas and everything, so I walked into to a local TD bank. That's who I personally bank with, and they're like, as long as you have some sort of ID on you, we can access your account and get you some cash. Luckily, I did have a picture of my driver's license with me, so I showed that to them, and they were able to get into my account and hand me over some cash. So I guess I was financially prepared at that point.
Oh, that's handy.
That's good to know. And just going to throw that out there, there's a fantastic app that I have on my phone. There's a free version, a paid version called Genius Scan. And that will actually, you use your camera and it will generate whatever it takes the picture of. It will generate a new PDF, which is a nice stable platform. It cuts off all the cuts off all the bleed so that your document looks nice. But it's just one of those. There's a free version that you can just email it to yourself, and then or there's a paid version where you can store it in a couple of different places. So just something to put on your phone. Another app that will make this easier for you.
One app that I use is called LastPass. So everything is all completely encrypted. It's a free version or free program as well. You can pay for it, and then you can share with family members, etc. So there are some enhanced features if you do pay for a subscription, but the free one is completely free, and it's all encrypted. So that's another thing. If you're going to be taking pictures of credit cards, you're going to be taking pictures of your ID, storing electronic documents such as your bank records. You're going to want to make sure that stuff's encrypted if you're throwing it up on the cloud, because sure, the service providers just say they don't look at it. Maybe they do.
Nothing is private.
Nothing's private. But if you encrypt it and then throw it up there, they can't see it. So another thing to keep in mind.
Perfect. And again, if we've been talking about individual financial prep, if you're a business owner, then there's an added responsibility on you to make sure that your personal finances are in check, as well as your business finances and your business documents are in check. So having your articles of incorporation handy, your minutes book, keeping that electronic, any documentations related to your business, because there was a situation in the GTA area where an accounting office went up in flames, I feel bad for all of the clients that relied on that accountant to do their business taxes and everything. It's going to be a tough conversation with the CRA to call them up and be like, listen, I don't have any accounting records because the accountant's office went up in flames. There is a provision in the Tax Act for that. However, in order to avoid anything like that, and that's the entire reason why I founded Countech CPA as a virtual accounting firm, is to provide clients with that access. We do that for personal clients as well as for business clients and people who love to embrace technology. That's why they're not listening to the radio, they're listening to this podcast here, is for them to understand the need of the hour is to keep your documents secure. And if you go with the flow, then cloud-based technologies, again, you can use the help of a computer genius to make sure that you encrypt sensitive data and before putting it up. But that's what we hope to achieve with our clients in Countech CPA.
Awesome. No, it's always a good idea to have things in various locations for exactly as you described, right? If a building goes up in flames and all your documents are stored there, well, now your documents are gone, right? So you can store them in alternate locations. Perfect. And then if you're putting them in the cloud, they're accessible anywhere you are, even better.
Yeah.
But keeping the encryption thing in mind too, because the cloud thing's nice, but you never know exactly who's on the other end.
Again, don't fall for the free stuff. Everything that's free is not always safe. It's better to sometimes pay something, and if you're not sure, always get help of a professional. If you have if you are a high net worth individual, you do carry a lot of sensitive documents with you. It's worth it to pay someone to encrypt it for you. Make sure that it's done correctly before putting it up anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Another thing here I've got on the list is a copy of your credit report, and then keep an eye on that too, right? So have a paper copy of it or electronic copy, and keep an eye. The sooner you catch somebody who's fraudulently doing some transactions on your credit, the sooner you can start battling it and stopping it, right?
Couldn't agree more.
Actually, quick question on that with a credit report. Obviously, you declare bankruptcy, it's going to destroy your credit. But how long does something like that with a stigma attached to it last on your credit report? Like, so say if you are late on bills or whatever have you, how long before you can wipe that clean?
I am not exactly sure, but I will tell you this. Back in high school, I borrowed a book from the Mississauga Library. And,
is she still chasing you?
No. Let me complete the story here. So when it was time to get my first mortgage, I actually went in and did it. The guy's like, everything looks fine. You should be okay. And then he calls me. He's like, there's a late charge from the Mississauga Library that's hitting your credit score. I was like, what are you talking about? This can't be true. I don't even remember if I borrowed anything. I haven't even used my card in so long. So it was it was a long time. And that thing was reflecting on my credit report. So it really depends on the transaction and who is the person that's pressing those charges. I guess the Mississauga Library system, that's not going anywhere. That's why they had that on my credit report. Anyways, I had to walk in and pay the bills before they could proceed with my mortgage application.
Wow, they take things seriously.
Very seriously.
Wow.
Some book I don't even recall reading.
They do, actually. Funny story. I was at the Hot Springs last year that I was going to mention later on in the podcast here. Got talking with a couple ladies that work at the Vancouver Public Library. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. And they were talking about how they'd filmed part of Deadpool there. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's neat. Okay. And so like, yeah. So Ryan Reynolds came into the library and we had to remind him that he still got late overdue charges from the 1980s. And I was like, wow, they really don't forget, do they?
That's crazy. Follows you around.
I'm gonna have
I might have to go check on my library card.
Another thing I've got on the list here, and Ian, you already touched on it in your list there, is just some cash. If there's a power outage, for example, or the ATMs or debit machines are down, eventually they're going to stop working. So keep some cash on hand, but make sure some small bills. I don't know if we touched on that a little bit earlier, but if you're walking around with $100 bill in your pocket there, and maybe the people you're trying to buy a bottle of water from don't have change or claim to not have change. Next thing you know, you're paying the $100 for a couple bottles of water, or you just walking away. So keep that in mind. Keep some small change on you, but at the same time, low profile with the cash you do have on you, because you don't want to be attracting the negative attention as well that comes with having a lot of cash.
Great point. And yeah, my note on that was something that was already discussed, of just keeping hard copies and at least a couple of different backups of all your documents somewhere, so that should the worst happen, you still have access to it digitally as well as the hard copies. And just know where your stuff is. I haven't seen my social insurance card in probably 22 years. It may or may not exist somewhere, but just know where your documents are, especially the things that can be that are who you say you are, like your passport and your driver's license. If something goes missing, take care of that.
Interestingly enough, I do believe I don't know who issues it anymore. I think it's Vital Statistics or something. Will actually reissue a new SIN number, free of charge, with the old number on it.
I mean, I don't need it. I've known the number my whole life, but I don't just physical card. But even your birth certificate. That's a really important document to not lose. Same with your. That's a long process to get a new one, by the way. Had to do that for my kids when we got their passports. You had to go through the long form birth certificate, and it was quite the arduous process to get that done. So it's better to not lose it in the first place. And if you do lose it, take care of it. If you lose your passport, report it missing so that it can't be used against you or can't be used for somebody to fake being you.
One thing that I would like to add on here for the listeners, especially the Canadian listeners, is to sign up for a MyCRA account for your personal and for your business. One of the benefits of doing that is, and I did have a client in the past who had T4s issued to him, although he wasn't working for that particular organization anymore. And it was an error. He didn't realize it until 2 years down the line when he got a letter from the CRA auditing him for the past 3 years. So when you have access to MyCRA individual or MyCRA business, you can keep a track of the T4s that were issued under your name, all the different if you owe any amounts to the CRA, you can save on potentially paying any penalties and interests on them.
Oh, it's good tip. So they just keep track of pretty much everything associated to either your personal. It's associated with your social insurance number. Again, if you forget your social insurance number, you can log in there and that number will pop right up. So they keep a track of all of the T4s, T4As, T5s issued to you. So everything shows up over there. And the way the CRA is operating, or the way they see themselves in the next few years, is basically they will stop sending you mail at home. No more brown envelopes. So they are moving everything to be electronic. So what they would do is basically send you an email. However, that email will be encrypted and there will be no data on it. That email will point you towards your MyCRA account, where you log in and then view the mail. Interesting.
So now that they're going to go paperless, anybody taking bets on whether their operating expenses are going to reduce?
The government never gets smaller, you know that.
Actually, so I just added that to the podcast challenge for later.
No, it's interesting though that they're going to be moving that way.
Their size is not going to decrease, but the amount of time that they take in order to process things, especially if you are putting in a notice of objection for an assessment of a particular tax item, if you do file it electronically, their turnaround time is a lot faster than it is if you were to paper file something.
Oh, good to know.
So there is a benefit for Canadians who are questioning why the CRA would move things electronically.
Well, makes sense. Paperless society, right?
Correct.
Closer.
So I just want to touch on just an area here as to any kind of tools that we like to use for financial planning. Myself personally, just to keep track of the personal finances at the house, we use You Need a Budget, or YNAB. So if you go to over to ynab.com, they offer a 34-day trial. So it is a paid software package. I think it's about $50 for the year for a subscription. And it's just something that helps you kind of keep track of where you're spending, how you're spending. You put everything in the categories and organize your finances that way. I've found it quite helpful. I've used it for the last, at least 6 or 7 years now. Just kind of helps you visually see where your money is going, where it's being used, put everything into its own little category, and away you go. So can head over there and check it out for 34-day free trial, and then
That's such a weird number.
Yeah, well, their idea is you're supposed to, using their system, be able to get 1 month of like a buffer area. So they want you to use it for a month and a little bit, and then, and then from there you can start paying them for the service. But yeah, the 34-day trial is to get you through an entire month of their system. They offer free online training as well, so you can hop on a live class with an instructor and run through all their software and how it works and how their mentality on doing budgeting. And whether you use it or not. I've used some things that they teach in the classes, and I've taken others and gone, yeah, no, that's not working for me, and I throw it out. But it's a nice little software package, and the classes are interesting as well.
Well, mine's much more low tech. I use my wife. She's a Scottish background lady, so basically every time I reach for something on the shelf, she gives me the dirty look, and that's usually when I retract my hand, and that prevents me from impulse buys and saving money that way. And I get verbal reminders, I get daily reminders, I get it's all sorts of stuff. I've been using it for 18 years, so it's a perfect system.
Yeah, there you go.
I just do everything in cash. If I don't have the cash in my pocket, then I'll buy it. But that's just me too.
Yeah.
No, that works for a lot of people, especially people who, who just swipe their cards and get a surprise credit card statement at the end of the month. If you have some saving goals in mind, what you could do is you can withdraw $500 every time you get a paycheck and just live off of that. Try and live off of that. That's a very good way for people to save. Another point that I want to add in is a lot of times sometimes people, they don't have the self-control or they lack the self-control. When they see a couple $1,000s in their bank accounts, they just go on a spending mode. So a friend of mine, what he does is basically he withdraws all the excess cash, puts it away in a bank account, and cuts off the card. So basically he has no access to it. It works out for him. And any time, and that acts as an emergency fund. So he can just wire transfer money into that account. He has the debit card cut off. He's like, why would you do that? And he said, if I have access to that card, I would just go spend that money. So in order to prevent myself from doing that, I just make it very inaccessible. And the branch that I deal with, or the bank that I deal with, they only accept. They don't have. For the longest time, they didn't have a customer service telephone line. So you would have to actually walk into the branch and withdraw the money. So.
At least he's recognizing his shortcomings and then learning how to deal with them, and that's pretty huge of him actually to realize to overcome that. So,
correct.
That's good.
So you should figure out a way to understand what works for you and what doesn't work for you in terms of a budgeting software or just putting together your personal finances together. There's tons of free spreadsheets out online. If you just do a quick Google search, you'll be able to find it. If you need some professional help, it's always good to reach out to your accountant. I'm surprised by how many times people don't utilize their accountants, because your accountant, having a good accountant can really help you in a lot of ways, because financial stability, financial security, being prepared financially is tackling half of life's issues, right?
Absolutely, it is. Do move into the podcast challenge?
Absolutely. So I modified the first part slightly because of what Taha was telling us. So the podcast challenge this week is to save a small monthly amount. I mean, whatever you can afford, $100, whatever it happens to be. The goal being to end up with 6 months of basic expenses as a contingency fund. So by having 6 months worth of your basic expenses covered, I'm thinking it should cover many, or dare I say most, of your unexpected expenses, even if it's job loss or whatever have you.
That's great. Gotten here as well to sign up for the MyCRA account to track your account usage. It's a good thing as well to do. And if you want to fire off an email to feedback@prepperpodcast and let us know how that's working out for you. If you found any tips or tricks on how to maybe find that extra $100 or so, fire off an email to the feedback@prepperpodcast. Let us know how it worked out. As well, signing up for MyCRA if you had any problems with it or if it worked out well for you, any tricks or tips there as well for getting signed up. Let us know about it.
And I added kind of one more thing there. It's something that I've heard about, I've read about it, but it's kind of a descending descending order. Week after Christmas, put away $52, and you do that every week, and take out $1 less every week, so that by the end of the year, so December 1st, so $52, then 51, and then 50, and then 49, and by the first week of December, you should have a little more than $1,300 in your account. Just put aside for Christmas, and then it's not a big cash crunch at the end of the year. And if you put it into something that generates a little bit of interest, then it's even more.
Nice.
It's one of those cumulative effort items where if you don't necessarily notice it missing, but it works out in the end.
Well, especially if you take it off the top before you start doing your monthly expenses and just put that away first, you probably won't even notice it.
Exactly.
Good, I like it.
Correct. Another tip about Christmas shopping or spending around Christmas, around the holiday season, is basically don't wait until the last minute. Try and make your purchases online. Look for the deals. You have to send gifts to your family or give gifts to your family. Might as well start planning it way ahead. Maybe even in August, September, and October. Just don't buy perishable items. That wouldn't be a good Christmas gift.
Here's this nice wheel of cheese I bought you in December. Enjoy it.
Yeah, and it expires in a day, so please have it today. Right?
Yes. Don't mind the mold. Just add some flavor.
Another podcast challenge that I would like to throw to the listeners is to visit my website, countech.ca. If we could be of any assistance to you in your personal financial needs during the tax season, or for if you happen to be a business owner and would be interested in seeing how cloud-based technologies can make your life easier and help you focus on running your business more efficiently, give it a visit. If you find something interesting or feel that we could be of any assistance, feel free to give me a call.
Awesome. We'll throw a link in the show notes too for people to Count Tech, so you've got the website in the show notes.
Appreciate that.
No problem. And we'll move into the episode closing and upcoming events. So same as last week's episode, we've got the 2019 annual Preppers Meet coming up in Desborough, Ontario. Runs July 11th to 14th. Check it out at annualpreppersmeet.com. I believe they're still doing early bird tickets. So check the website out, grab a ticket or 2 or 5, and bring the whole family out if you can. And it's a great weekend. Come out for a day, come out for the whole thing if you have to. Just get out there. It's a good event full of all kinds of great information, some awesome instructors. And like I said last week, I'm a little biased on that because I happen to be one of those instructors. But it's a great event to get out to. So certainly check it out. Come out and say hello. I'll be there hopefully again this year, doing the communications section for them in regards to ham radio operation and how you can implement communications in your emergency preparedness plans. So, and the annual Preppers Meet, July 11th to 14th.
All right, I got the first annual Western Canada Hot Springs Meet, May 25th, 26th. It's at Sloquet Hot Springs. We're going to be doing a little bit of campcraft, preparedness discussion. A good meetup for like-minded people. It's just a bit of an adventure to get out there. So there's a couple of websites listed there to figure out how to get there, and it's also mentioned on the Maps.me app for offline GPS.
Awesome. We'll move into some shout-outs.
I completely failed to put anything in there, so we'll skip me.
No problem. So I got a shout-out to Sasquatch research scientist. Where'd you go? If you're lost, there's an episode on orientation. Listen to it. You can get back on track with your compass. Come back, say hello. We miss you.
I do miss the stories of the yellow bus.
Actually, maybe he watched that. Maybe watched that movie Big Legend and decided that maybe Sasquatch research was no longer a good idea. It looks like a pretty gruesome movie for sure. Well, I've got a little shout out for my parents. Actually, I think they're probably watching their first episode tonight. So they.
Hi, Ian's parents.
Yeah, there you go. They didn't know about the podcast till last week, so they're probably checking it out as we speak.
Awesome. All right, so we'll move into the email and iTunes reviews. So we got an email from Sean. He emailed us last week, and we went over his emergency roadside kit. He sent us a picture of his man cave. Figured that the panelists would get a kick out of it. So I put it up in the show notes.
I call shenanigans on this. No room is that cool.
No, but actually, I was gonna say, could we be friends or something? Can we hang out sometime?
No, I'm calling total BS on that.
Yeah.
Like, that's gotta be Photoshop. That room is just too much fun.
Well, it's either he borrowed a picture off the internet, he's single, or I know he's got a very cool wife, or something's going on. But that's a lot of cash, a lot of time and effort put into that room. Like that's pretty awesome.
So
Reminds me of
me is going to come out here. I did some validation on the photo. It is not a photo off the internet. I actually know the type of device and the geo coordinates of where the photo was taken, but I'm obviously not going to put that out. But yeah, it is a legitimate photo.
Wow.
Reminds me of the Ben Affleck movie, The Accountant. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it tonight.
Oh yeah, fantastic movie. Actually,
Yeah.
it's well done. But
that reminded me of his trailer when I looked at that picture.
the old silver bullet,
sure.
yeah.
I'm just looking for valuable art in that picture. I can't find any.
Yeah, just even the silver ducting that gives it the air of The Accountant for sure.
Yeah. I wonder what's in there.
Yeah, no, exactly. Might be some stuff hidden in there for sure.
All right, and we've got an email here, and I'm going to completely butcher the name, but Ursina, do you guys think that's right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ursina.
Right. Ursina, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but it says, "Hi guys, I've been meaning the email for a while. Listen to almost all the podcasts by now. You're pretty much my favorite podcast. Awesome, we can be friends." I'm not sure why. I'm not sure. I'm not a prepper. Well, yeah, that's fine.
It's because of that episode where it was just my face the whole hour.
That's totally what it was.
That's got to be it.
Or the giant clock behind it.
Or the giant clock, yes.
Or both. So I used to be much more prepared than we moved to a wild part of La Belle Provence. I'm going to guess that's Quebec. I'm so excited to hear you're finally covering financial preparedness. So she's quite excited about this episode. I'm an accountant by day and farmer at night. I see a lot of sad financial things. I'm very curious to see what you recommend. I have my own recommendations, but I'm not a prepper. I'd say listening to the podcast, you're probably going to be getting into being a prepper.
Methinks thou dost protest too much here. And it's just if you're running a farm and you're actually concerned about anything other than what's on TV, I'd say you're probably leaning towards prepper.
Absolutely.
The first step is being aware.
I love the wilderness ecology episode. Thank you for reminding me. I'm an oddity. When I moved here, it drove me crazy for months because I could not follow the weather. Growing up on a large farm in southwestern Ontario in the real snowbelt, reading the weather was normal. I suggest for your listeners, they should do some research and rank what kind of weather events are most likely to happen. That's how I found your podcast. I was listening to 2050 Degrees of Change and Fault Lines from CBC. That's interesting. I now live on an earthquake zone. I'm likely to flood living on the upper edge of the valley, but ice storms, windstorms, snowstorms, and now tornadoes are common. I haven't seen any dramatic thunderstorms like I grew up with. As a result,
some great thunderstorms around here.
Oh yeah. As a result of listening to your podcast, I've been researching preparedness. Awesome. I probably have enough food for 10 to 30 days. So you're well ahead of pretty much everybody. In the house any day of the week because I hate shopping. Fair enough. My biggest concerns are water. So I assume you've listened to the water episode. I have hundreds of animals that need water. I thought it would be simple as getting a generator. The answer is no. My house is on a different power supply from the rest of the farm. The water well pump is on the house and the pumps for the barn are on the barn power supply. So I have to find some smart solution for that. Love the wood stove tip. I hope to install a wood stove in the office so at least we have one warm room in case of an emergency. Good idea.
Good call. Yep.
Could you cover skills and things for the long term? I have horses I ride. That's always been curious to me why others don't consider that a useful skill. Gas runs out fast. I saw that after the summer's tornadoes. I can get around for a long time with my horses. Good point.
A good point. Wasn't that? Yeah. There was a TV show. I want to say it was a MASH episode. And she traded her car for an ox because the ox could pull a cart and eat at the side of the road, but the car needed gas. I think it was an episode of MASH.
Could be.
But yeah, that's a great point, right? The horse goes a long time without needing an external fuel source.
That's true. It says here also, I'm also interested in bows and archery because guns, meh. We can agree to disagree on that one.
Bows are also awesome.
Fair enough. But the meh part, okay. I have dogs for what most people would carry a gun guarding my animals. Okay, sure. that's part of the prepping, but I find that's part of the prepping that I find most interesting. What comes after the first month? How would you adapt to a new reality? Yeah, good point.
I think we've got 17 more episodes there all of a sudden.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, she's doing well with archery. I actually tip my hat to her because honestly, my daughters and I gave it a solid effort for a year, and I still couldn't get to the point where I could do like an ethical kill on an animal, because it's just, even at 25 yards, it's so tough with a recurve bow. Unless you go right to the compound that are hard to fix, but I'm more of a recurve or like a straight version crossbow, because I mean, easier to fix, right? You can fix them yourself, whereas anything compound is basically you have to take it to a shop, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
Yeah,
and they're quiet too, right? They're not nearly as loud as a firearm would be.
but yeah, and if she's not happy with firearms, you know what? That's cool too. Like, I mean, it's not for everybody, and certainly if you're not comfortable with them, don't get them. Because
absolutely, that's a really good rule. Yep.
yeah, I mean, but I think eventually that comes around too, because I mean, I have animals for livestock protection, but they can't cover 24/7. We still lost one of our alpacas to a cougar with the dog barking, because we didn't think it was actually the dog was barking about a cougar. We just thought it was barking at one of the neighbors. So, hey, it's not a foolproof system for sure.
Yeah. This goes on here. As for your podcast challenge, I know the wind generally comes from top west of my farm, or the west in general. It's going to be bad if it comes from the bottom or the east. We changed the orientation of our barn because of the winds. We wanted to have the barn designed to use the winds for ventilation. I totally want to find a wilderness first aid class now. I have the basic first aid kits around. Awesome.
Excellent. Well, we're gonna do another first aid episode. I've got going on a wilderness first aid course in about a month, and I'm sure we'll circle back to first aid again, and that's we'll talk about that again, I'm sure.
Yes. Almost guaranteed. We scrolled off on the first aid topic a few times last episode, so I think for sure we need at least a version 2.0, if not 3.0.
I think we do. Yep.
And I bet you she's got a good supply of vet wrap at her farm already, so that's good. She'll be able to use
vet wrap is the best. Yeah, lots of vet wrap. That's a great preparedness tool.
So finish us off with keep up the good work, and I hope you mention the bomb, cyclone, and flooding in Nebraska on the podcast. It was farm country that was hit pretty bad, and that's the part I see on the news and follow. If you're ever doing a farming podcast, I have tons of resources and information. We're going to have to hit you up for that.
Well, actually, yeah, so Ursula, drop Eric or myself or Alan, just drop one of us an email, and then we can get some basic contact info on you, so we can, if that's the case, we'll get you on for sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And as far as iTunes reviews go, we are still with NV35S for March the 10th. We are up to 17 ratings now, so 16 5-star. We've still got that one little guy of 4 stars. Don't worry about that little guy.
Don't worry about that one. It's fine. It's fine. Just pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
It was totally a typo. Just can't be changed.
Yeah, just click the wrong button there. Right? And no new Podbean reviews either.
Well, you can't win them. You can't win every week, and that's all right.
No, this is true. So with that, I'll bring episode number 17 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Take a few minutes and submit a review. It helps us know that we're doing well and that you're enjoying the show, or you're not, depending on the type of review that you put in, like that one little guy there. You can also find us at prepperpodcast.ca.
And Taha, you want to take the opportunity to plug your website and your contact info again?
Yes, thanks for having me on for our first podcast here. It was really fun to spend a couple hours with you guys. For people who are interested in getting their personal taxes filed, or looking for a better way of running their business more efficiently, try and hand off your bookkeeping and day-to-day cumbersome paperwork stuff to a professional accountant and their team to take care of, you can visit our website, countech.ca. We service, we're based in Toronto. However, we work with clients all across Ontario. Some of my clients are based in Edmonton, Northern Ontario, even some in Vancouver.
Awesome.
Fair enough. So you can, if you want to reach Ian directly, you can email me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. You can also find me giving my 2 cents worth on Canadian Patriot Podcast, also available on iTunes and YouTube. There you will find us discussing the merits of a freer society, exposing more government waste, and squirreling off on the odd tactically driven conversation.
I also record these shows live on YouTube. If you want an early peek at the show, please subscribe to the Islander Treat YouTube channel. Click the notifications tab. That will let you know when we are going live. You can find me directly on Instagram at ppswo.
Awesome. Please check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there in the live chat while you're buying some prepper gear. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. Taha, just another thank you very much for coming out this evening and spending an hour or so with us and sharing your knowledge. Greatly appreciated. I know the listeners are going to use your information and hopefully give you a call as well, possibly use your services. But it's been great to have you come out and share your knowledge. We all greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. So
thanks for joining us. Tune in next episode where we're going to be discussing mutual assistance groups and avoiding the lone wolf situation. So until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.